Life is an ever-flowing river, constantly moving forward, carrying us through different stages of existence. As we reach our later years, especially after 70, we come to a profound realization. Time is our most precious and irreplaceable asset. Unlike material wealth, which can be accumulated and lost, time only moves in one direction, reminding us that every moment is invaluable. At this stage, it becomes essential to reassess our priorities, letting go of attachments, worries, and burdens that no longer serve our well-being. Clinging to resentment, regrets, or unnecessary obligations only drains our energy and prevents us from experiencing true peace. Instead, we can embrace a path of wisdom and serenity, allowing ourselves to focus on what truly matters, our inner growth, meaningful connections, and a sense of fulfillment. In this video, we will explore 12 things that often consume our mental and emotional energy without adding value to our lives. Drawing from Buddhist philosophy, we will learn how to release these burdens and cultivate mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance. By doing so, we make space for a more harmonious and enriching existence, embracing each day with gratitude and tranquility. Number 1, obsessing over others' opinions. From a Buddhist perspective, the tendency to obsess over others' opinions originates from attachment and illusion. The Buddha taught that clinging to external validation is one of the primary causes of human suffering. We often build a fragile sense of self that depends on how others perceive us, but in doing so, we become enslaved to opinions that constantly change, much like the shifting winds. Buddhism emphasizes the concept of impermanence, anicca. Everything, including opinions, changes over time. What someone thinks of you today may not be what they think of you tomorrow. If we base our happiness on these fleeting judgments, we will never find true peace. The self we try to protect, the one shaped by societal expectations, is not fixed. It is an illusion, a construct of the mind. Clinging to it only leads to suffering, dukkha. When we recognize that our worth is not dictated by the praise or criticism of others, we begin to cultivate a more stable and enduring sense of self. This is where mindfulness and self-awareness become powerful tools. Instead of reacting to every opinion that comes our way, we learn to observe them with detachment, understanding that they are merely passing thoughts, neither defining us nor diminishing our value. Many people seek external validation as a way to feel accepted and valued. Social media amplifies this tendency, creating an environment where likes, shares, and comments dictate one's sense of self-worth. The need for approval becomes an endless pursuit, as one positive comment can be overshadowed by a single negative remark. This cycle fosters anxiety, self-doubt, and a fear of judgment. However, Buddhism teaches that external validation is unreliable. No matter how much approval one receives, it is never enough. Like drinking salt water to quench thirst, the more one seeks validation, the more one feels empty. True contentment comes not from being praised, but from self-acceptance and inner confidence. A young man approached a Zen master, troubled by what others thought of him. He asked, "Master, how can I stop caring about people's opinions?" The master handed him a cup and asked him to walk through the village while keeping the cup completely full. He also instructed the young man to ignore whatever people said to him. As he walked, people mocked him, praised him, questioned him, and even shouted insults. However, his focus remained on the cup. Upon returning, the master asked, "Did you notice what people said?" "No," the young man replied. "I was too focused on keeping the cup from spilling." The master smiled and said, "Let your purpose in life be like this cup. When you are deeply focused on what truly matters, the noise of the world fades away." Instead of looking outward for validation, one must develop inner confidence. This confidence does not come from arrogance, but from a deep understanding of oneself. When you know who you are, what your values are, and what you stand for, others' opinions lose their power over you. A lotus flower grows in muddy waters, yet it rises above them, untouched by the dirt. Similarly, a person with inner confidence can exist in a world filled with judgment without being affected by it. This confidence is built through self-reflection, mindfulness, and embracing imperfection. Here are some practical steps to cultivate inner confidence. 1. Practice mindfulness. Observe your thoughts without judgment. When you notice yourself worrying about others' opinions, acknowledge it, but do not get caught in the cycle. 2. Develop self-awareness. Understand your strengths, weaknesses, and core values. The more you know yourself, the less external opinions will affect you. 3. Detach from social approval. Reduce reliance on social media validation. Limit time spent seeking approval and instead engage in activities that bring genuine fulfillment. 4. Embrace impermanence. Recognize that opinions change. Someone who criticizes you today may admire you tomorrow, and vice versa. 5. Surround yourself with supportive people. Engage with those who uplift and encourage you, rather than those who make you feel unworthy. One of the greatest freedoms is living authentically. Many people shape their actions based on what they think others expect of them, leading to a life of pretense. The Buddha taught that true peace comes from living in alignment with one's values, not from conforming to external pressures. An old Zen question asks, if a bird sings in the forest and no one hears it, does it still sing? The answer is yes. The bird sings because singing is its nature, not because it expects an audience. Likewise, we should live and express ourselves because it is in our nature to do so, not because we seek approval. Authenticity is powerful. When we are true to ourselves, we attract the right people and opportunities, and we live without the burden of constantly trying to please others. Fear of judgment often holds people back from pursuing their dreams, speaking their truth, or stepping out of their comfort zones. This fear arises from the assumption that others are constantly watching and evaluating us. However, in reality, most people are too focused on their own lives to scrutinize ours as much as we imagine. A useful exercise is to recall past instances where you feared judgment. How many of those fears turned into reality? How often did people actually judge you in the way you imagined? More often than not, our fears are exaggerated and unfounded. To overcome this fear, shift your perspective. Realize that people's opinions are reflections of their own experiences, not an absolute truth about you. Accept that judgment is inevitable. No matter what you do, some people will approve and others will not. Rather than trying to please everyone, focus on living in a way that aligns with your values. Take small steps. Start by expressing yourself in small ways, whether through art, writing, or speaking up. The more you do it, the less intimidating it becomes. Obsessing over others' opinions is a form of self-imposed suffering. The Buddhist path teaches that true liberation comes from letting go of attachment to external validation and turning inward for self-acceptance. Like the lotus that rises above the mud, we too can cultivate a life of peace and confidence, focusing on what truly matters: our purpose, values, and inner growth. By embracing impermanence, practicing mindfulness, and living authentically, we free ourselves from the chains of judgment and step into a life of true contentment. In the end, just as a bird sings whether or not anyone listens, we must live not for approval, but for the sheer joy of being alive. Number 2, perfectionism in the home. A clean and organized home undoubtedly contributes to a pleasant living environment. However, when the pursuit of perfection in maintaining one's home turns into an obsession, it can create unnecessary stress and anxiety. Perfectionism in any form tends to set an unattainable standard that leads to frustration rather than fulfillment. In the case of home maintenance, this often results in a cycle of endless cleaning, tidying, and reorganizing, leaving little room for rest, relaxation, and meaningful experiences. At its core, perfectionism is often about control, the desire to manage every aspect of our surroundings in an effort to create stability. A spotless home might symbolize discipline, success, or even emotional well-being. Yet, in reality, no home remains in a perpetual state of perfection. Dishes accumulate, dust settles, and items are misplaced. Attempting to maintain an immaculate environment at all times can be both exhausting and futile. This relentless quest for control can also take a toll on mental health. The pressure to keep everything pristine can lead to feelings of guilt, frustration, and inadequacy, especially when real life gets in the way. Work deadlines, family responsibilities, or even much-needed rest. When perfectionism dominates the home, the space that should provide comfort and relaxation becomes a source of tension instead. Buddhism teaches the importance of balance and the recognition of impermanence. The idea of clinging to order and perfection is a form of attachment, one that inevitably leads to suffering. The more we try to enforce an unrealistic level of order, the more we resist the natural flow of life. The concept of wabi-sabi, a Japanese philosophy derived from Buddhist teachings, encourages appreciation for imperfection and transience. Wabi-sabi finds beauty in the naturally aged, the slightly worn, and the asymmetrical. A chipped mug, a creaky wooden floor, or a slightly wrinkled bedspread. These are all reminders that life is in constant motion, and perfection is not necessary for beauty or happiness. By embracing this mindset, we can begin to let go of unrealistic expectations and find peace in the present moment. There was a time when I would spend hours ensuring that every surface in my home was spotless, every item was in its designated place, and not a single speck of dust remained. The satisfaction I felt from a perfectly clean house was always temporary. Within a day, there would be another mess to clean, another counter to wipe, another floor to sweep. The work was never ending, and I found myself becoming irritable and exhausted. At some point, I realized that my pursuit of a perfect home was robbing me of valuable moments of peace. Instead of constantly polishing countertops, I began incorporating mindfulness into my mornings, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, listening to the birds, and simply being present. I learned to accept that a bit of clutter was not a failure, but a sign of a lived-in, welcoming home. My time became better spent engaging in activities that nourished my well-being, rather than constantly striving for an unattainable standard of cleanliness. If you find yourself caught in the perfectionist mindset when it comes to home maintenance, consider these strategies to shift toward a healthier, more balanced approach. Prioritize what truly matters. Ask yourself, what aspects of cleanliness actually contribute to your well-being and which are simply driven by an unrealistic desire for perfection? Focus on maintaining a clean and safe space without overburdening yourself with excessive tidiness. Set realistic expectations. Accept that a lived-in home will never be spotless, 100% of the time. Instead of seeing minor messes as failures, recognize them as part of daily life. A few dishes in the sink or a stray book on the table are not signs of disorder, but indicators of an active and meaningful life. Create routines instead of perfectionist cycles. Rather than obsessively cleaning, establish a practical routine that keeps your home manageable without consuming all of your energy. For example, a simple 10-minute tidy up in the morning and evening can maintain a sense of order without becoming overwhelming. Embrace the aesthetic of wabi-sabi. Look for beauty in imperfection. Allow your home to reflect warmth and character rather than strict order. A slightly uneven bookshelf, a faded rug, or a handmade ceramic bowl with a slight flaw can add charm and authenticity to your space. Practice mindfulness in daily life. Instead of rushing to clean every minor mess, take a deep breath and assess whether it truly needs immediate attention. Spend more time enjoying your home rather than constantly working on it. Let go of comparison. It is easy to feel pressured by the flawless home seen on social media or in magazines. However, these images often do not reflect reality. Embrace the uniqueness of your own space rather than striving for an idealized version of it. Engage in activities that bring joy. Instead of spending every free moment cleaning, allocate time to hobbies, rest, and relationships. A home filled with laughter, love, and creativity is far more valuable than one that is merely spotless. Cultian and insurance Frank brings both. Never at shom fret, so shop svidgener. For profession, fro, for russell, of schursel, if, sa is, do you mean? For this again, was me who is in I feel you was in I feel man good for pu again. I know for I ha this so far bendi ka speeman in innings and mionelmings ars deferent is a chom shred fo for kiffing up right and that's Jenner burstgrass by fo stra bar pleffel if a pleffic pestle being a pick up deep we compare egg. Number 3, holding on to grudges. The burden of resentment. Grudges are heavy chains that bind us to the past, preventing us from moving forward with clarity and peace. When we hold on to resentment, we allow past wrongs to dictate our present emotions and future decisions. This emotional baggage can weigh us down, leading to unnecessary suffering. The Buddhist concept of forgiveness teaches that letting go of grudges is not about excusing wrongdoing, but about liberating ourselves from pain and negative energy. By choosing forgiveness, we reclaim our inner peace and break free from the emotional prison of resentment. A grudge is an unresolved resentment towards someone who has wronged us, either intentionally or unintentionally. These feelings of bitterness and anger can simmer beneath the surface for years, affecting our relationships, mental health, and overall well being. At its core, a grudge is often fueled by the belief that justice has not been served. We hold on to past offenses because we feel wronged, betrayed, or disrespected. The irony, however, is that the person we harbor resentment toward may not even be aware of our suffering. In some cases, they may have moved on with their lives while we remain trapped in the past. The harmful effects of holding grudges. Mental and emotional toll. Holding on to grudges leads to prolonged stress and anxiety. Studies have shown that chronic resentment is associated with higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, which can contribute to anxiety, depression, and even physical illnesses. When we replay past hurts in our minds, we keep the emotional wound fresh, never allowing it to heal. 2. Physical consequences. Resentment does not just affect our emotional state, it also has a direct impact on our physical health. Persistent anger and bitterness can lead to increased blood pressure, heart disease, weakened immune function, and chronic pain. The stress of holding on to negative emotions takes a toll on our bodies in ways we may not even realize. Number 3, damage to relationships. Grudges create emotional walls that prevent us from forming meaningful connections with others. When we allow past hurts to dictate our interactions, we become guarded, distrustful, and less open to love and compassion. This can strain not only our relationship with the person we resent, but also with others in our lives who may sense our negative energy. 4. Hindrance to personal growth. When we hold on to grudges, we become stuck in a cycle of negativity. Instead of learning from past experiences and growing as individuals, we remain fixated on the pain. This stagnation prevents us from fully embracing new opportunities and relationships. In contrast, letting go of resentment allows us to grow emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Buddhism teaches that attachment to anger and resentment is a major source of suffering. The famous analogy of holding on to a burning coal illustrates this concept perfectly. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. A well-known Zen parable highlights the importance of letting go of grudges. 2 monks were traveling together when they came across a young woman who needed help crossing a river. The older monk lifted her onto his back and carried her across. The younger monk was shocked but remained silent. Hours later, unable to contain himself, he said, "How could you carry that woman? We are not supposed to touch women." The older monk replied, "I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story beautifully illustrates how holding on to past events, whether an actual wrongdoing or simply a perceived offense, only causes unnecessary suffering. The older monk let go of the event as soon as it was over, while the younger monk clung to his resentment, allowing it to disturb his peace. How to let go of grudges. 1. Acknowledge your pain. The first step in releasing resentment is to acknowledge that you have been hurt. Suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist only leads to deeper suffering. Allow yourself to feel the pain, but recognize that holding on to it is a choice. 2. Shift your perspective. Try to view the situation from a broader perspective. Ask yourself, did the person hurt me intentionally, or was it a misunderstanding? Have I ever made mistakes and sought forgiveness from others? Is holding on to this resentment serving me, or is it only harming me? Shifting your perspective allows you to see that we are all imperfect beings who make mistakes. 3. Practice empathy and compassion. Developing empathy toward the person who wronged you can be a powerful tool in letting go. Often people act out of their own pain, insecurities, or ignorance. By understanding their perspective, you may find it easier to release resentment. Compassion does not mean condoning bad behavior, but rather recognizing the humanity in others. 4. Express your feelings constructively. Sometimes holding onto a grudge stems from unspoken words. If appropriate, consider having an open and honest conversation with the person involved. Expressing your feelings in a calm and respectful manner can bring closure and prevent further misunderstandings. 5. Release the need for justice or revenge. Many people struggle to let go of grudges because they feel that justice has not been served. However, seeking revenge or waiting for an apology that may never come only prolongs your suffering. True freedom comes from releasing the need for external validation and choosing inner peace instead. 6. Engage in healing practices. Meditation, journaling, and mindfulness practices can help in processing emotions and releasing negative energy. Reflecting on gratitude and focusing on the positive aspects of life can shift your mindset from resentment to acceptance. 7. Make a conscious decision to forgive. Forgiveness is not a one-time act, but an ongoing process. It does not mean forgetting or allowing someone to hurt you again, but rather choosing not to let past pain control your present. When you decide to forgive, you free yourself from the weight of bitterness and open yourself to peace and joy. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones representing each grudge you hold. Every step feels exhausting, yet you refuse to put the bag down. Now, picture yourself finally setting the bag down, how much lighter and freer you would feel. This is the power of forgiveness. Letting go of grudges does not mean excusing harm or becoming a doormat. It means prioritizing your well-being and choosing peace over suffering. By releasing resentment, you reclaim control over your emotions and pave the way for healing and growth. Grudges may feel justified in the moment, but in the long run, they serve no positive purpose. They keep us tethered to past pain, preventing us from fully embracing the present. As the Buddhist teachings remind us, anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. The only way to truly free ourselves is to let go. By practicing forgiveness and releasing grudges, we cultivate a lighter heart, a clearer mind, and a more peaceful existence. The choice is always ours. Carry the burden or set it down and move forward in peace. Number 4, trying to please everyone, a futile pursuit. In life, we often tend to please those around us. This stems from the need for recognition, love, and a sense of belonging. From a young age, we are taught that the approval of others is an important measure of our worth. But is it really possible to please everyone at the same time? Buddhism teaches that trying to satisfy everyone is a futile effort. When we live based on the judgments of others, we unknowingly allow our happiness to be controlled by external factors. This can easily lead to anxiety, stress, and a loss of direction. One day, the Buddha and his disciples were passing through a village when a man approached and began to insult him, calling him a fraud and a deceiver. The Buddha listened silently without reacting. After the man had exhausted his anger, the Buddha calmly asked, "If someone brings you a gift, but you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man thought for a moment and replied, "If I do not accept it, then it still belongs to the one who brought it." And said, "Exactly. I do not accept your anger and insults, so they still belong to you." This story teaches us an important lesson. No matter what we do, there will always be people who are dissatisfied. If even an enlightened being like the Buddha was criticized, how can we, ordinary people, escape judgment? In Buddhism, compassion is a fundamental virtue. However, compassion does not mean putting others' needs above your own happiness. A bodhisattva helps others, but does not lose themselves in the process. There is a story about a wealthy and generous man. He always helped others, regardless of whether they truly needed help. He gave money to beggars without considering whether they would use it for good. He helped friends even when they took advantage of his kindness. Over time, he became exhausted and lost himself. One day, a Zen master visited him and said, "You cannot pour water from an empty jug. If you keep giving without replenishing yourself, you will have nothing left to give." The man realized that he had lost the balance between compassion and self-care. From then on, he learned to set boundaries and only helped when it was truly meaningful. The lesson here is, we can help others, but not at the cost of harming ourselves. One of the reasons we try to please everyone is the fear of judgment. However, Buddhism teaches that everything is impermanent, including human thoughts and opinions. What is praised today may be criticized tomorrow. There is a famous folk tale about an old man, a boy, and a donkey. One day, the two were leading their donkey through a village. The villagers mocked them, saying, "Why are you walking when you have a donkey? Why not ride it?" Hearing this, the old man let the boy ride the donkey. But in the next village, people said, How disrespectful. The young boy rides while the old man walks. So they switched places with the old man riding the donkey. When they passed another village, the villagers said, "What a selfish old man. He rides while the boy walks." Finally, both the old man and the boy rode the donkey. But in the next village, people criticized, "How cruel. The donkey is carrying too much weight." Tired of the criticism, they decided to carry the donkey on their shoulders. As they crossed a bridge, they lost their balance and the donkey fell into the river. The moral of the story is, no matter what you do, someone will always judge you. If you constantly try to satisfy others, you will lose yourself. Here are some methods to help you live happily without being bound by others' expectations. 1. Recognize your own value. You do not need others' approval to know that you are valuable. Take time to understand yourself and determine what truly matters to you. 2. Learn to say no without guilt. Saying no does not mean you are selfish. If something negatively affects your mental or physical well-being, you have the right to refuse. 3. Practice mindfulness meditation. Meditation helps you detach from negative thoughts and anxiety about others' opinions. When you live in the present moment, you care less about external judgments. 4. Accept that you cannot please everyone. No matter how hard you try, there will always be people who are dissatisfied. Accepting this reality helps you live more freely. 5. Live by your own values. Instead of chasing others' expectations, set your own standards. When you live authentically, you will attract people who truly appreciate you. Buddhism teaches that happiness does not come from others' approval, but from inner peace. When you stop trying to please everyone, you will find true freedom and happiness. Remember the Buddha's words, "Even a perfect being cannot please everyone." If perfection itself is criticized, why should we seek universal approval? Number 5, accumulating material possessions. In a world that constantly promotes consumerism, it's easy to fall into the trap of accumulating more than we truly need. From the latest gadgets to trendy clothing, from decorative trinkets to expensive cars, the idea that material possessions bring happiness is deeply ingrained in modern society. However, if we take a step back and reflect, we may realize that accumulating excessive belongings often leads to more stress rather than fulfillment. Minimalism, which encourages us to live with intention and simplicity, aligns closely with Buddhist principles. Buddhism teaches that attachment to material things leads to suffering, as everything in life is impermanent. When we become too attached to our possessions, we set ourselves up for disappointment because these items will eventually degrade, break, or become obsolete. The pursuit of material wealth can also lead to an endless cycle of desire, where no matter how much we acquire, we always feel the need for more. Marketing and advertising play a significant role in shaping our perceptions of happiness. We are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us a bigger house, a newer phone, or a designer handbag will bring us joy and status. For a brief moment, acquiring something new may provide a sense of excitement, but this feeling is often short-lived. The novelty wears off, and soon we find ourselves looking for the next thing to satisfy us. This cycle, known as the hedonic treadmill, keeps us chasing after external validation rather than cultivating true inner peace. Some people work tirelessly, sacrificing their time, energy, and even relationships just to afford luxurious items, yet they may still feel empty inside. Why? Because material wealth cannot replace meaningful experiences, human connections, or personal growth. If our happiness is dependent on what we own, we are at the mercy of external circumstances, which are ever-changing and unpredictable. While material possessions may provide temporary pleasure, they can also become a burden. Owning too many things can lead to clutter, both physically and mentally. A house overflowing with unused items creates a chaotic environment, making it harder to focus and feel at peace. Psychologists have found that clutter can increase stress levels and anxiety, as it overwhelms our senses and makes it difficult to relax. Beyond the physical space, excessive possessions can also weigh us down emotionally. We may hold on to things out of guilt, nostalgia, or the fear of wasting money, even when they no longer serve a purpose in our lives. These attachments can prevent us from moving forward as we cling to the past rather than embracing the present. Additionally, the more things we own, the more time and effort we must invest in maintaining them. Expensive cars require constant servicing, Large houses demand upkeep, and countless gadgets need updates or repairs. Instead of freeing us, excessive ownership often enslaves us, forcing us to work harder to sustain a lifestyle centered around possessions. True freedom comes when we release ourselves from the weight of unnecessary possessions. Simplifying our lives allows us to shift our focus from external acquisitions to internal fulfillment. When we own only what we truly need and value, we create space, not just in our homes but in our minds and hearts as well. Many people who have embraced minimalism describe feeling a profound sense of relief and liberation. Instead of being overwhelmed by clutter, they find joy in having a tidy and peaceful environment. Instead of being preoccupied with shopping, they invest their time in experiences, relationships, and personal growth. Instead of measuring their worth by what they own, they define success by how fulfilled they feel. One of the most rewarding aspects of letting go is the ability to give to others. When we donate clothes, books, furniture, or other belongings that we no longer need, we are not only decluttering our space, but also making a positive impact on someone else's life. There is a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from giving. Seeing someone in need benefit from something we once owned can bring a much greater sense of joy than simply keeping it stored away. Acts of generosity help cultivate compassion and gratitude, both of which are essential for a meaningful and content life. Buddhism teaches that generosity, or dana, is one of the key virtues that lead to spiritual growth. By giving freely and selflessly, we detach from material cravings and practice non-attachment. The more we give, the less we cling to material possessions, and the more we cultivate a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. For those who wish to embrace a simpler, more intentional lifestyle, here are some practical steps to start letting go of excessive possessions. 1. Assess your belongings. Take an honest look at what you own. Ask yourself, do I really need this? Does this item add value to my life? If not, it may be time to let it go. 2. Declutter. One category at a time. Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, start with one category, such as clothes, books, or kitchen items. This makes the process more manageable. 3. Adopt the 1-year rule. If you haven't used an item in the past year, chances are you don't need it. Consider donating or selling it. 4. Focus on experiences over things. Instead of spending money on material goods, invest in experiences that bring lasting memories, such as travel, learning a new skill, or spending quality time with loved ones. 5. Practice gratitude. Regularly reflect on what you already have and appreciate its value. Gratitude shifts the focus from wanting more to appreciating the present moment. 6. Give with intention. Rather than simply discarding items, find ways to give them to people or organizations that can benefit from them. This creates a sense of purpose in the decluttering process. 7. Be mindful of future purchases. Before buying something new, ask yourself if it truly serves a purpose in your life. Avoid impulsive shopping and be intentional about what you bring into your space. I remember a time when I felt weighed down by my possessions. My closet was overflowing, my shelves were cluttered with books I never read, and my home felt more like a storage unit than a place of peace. The more I owned, the more I felt an unspoken pressure to maintain, organize, and protect my belongings. One day, I decided to start letting go. I donated clothes that no longer fit, gave away books to a local library, and passed on sentimental items to friends who would appreciate them more. With every item I released, I felt a growing sense of lightness. The joy of giving far outweighed the fleeting satisfaction of ownership. What surprised me most was how little I missed those things. Instead of feeling deprived, I felt free. My home became a space of calm rather than clutter, and my mind felt clearer than ever before. More importantly, I realized that true happiness does not come from what we own, but from how we live, love, and connect with others. Accumulating material possessions is a habit deeply ingrained in modern society, but it is not the key to lasting happiness. While having basic necessities and some comforts is important, excess leads to clutter, both physical and emotional. Embracing minimalism and practicing non-attachment can help us create a life that is richer in meaning and fulfillment. By letting go of what we don't need, we make room for what truly matters: experiences, relationships, and personal growth. And when we share our abundance with others, we not only lighten our own load, but also bring joy and relief to those in need. In the end, the less we own, the more we gain. Number 6, comparing yourself to others. People often have the tendency to compare themselves to others. From childhood to adulthood, we are surrounded by comparisons. Who is wealthier? Who is more talented? Who is happier? However, both Buddhism and Stoicism warn that comparison is a source of suffering and disrupts inner peace. In Buddhism, dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction, is one of the 3 marks of existence. The Buddha taught that comparing oneself to others creates dukkha because it fosters envy, jealousy, and internal conflict. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Whoever looks at others as superior or inferior creates turmoil within their own heart." Each person has their own unique path, karma, and lessons to learn. Comparing ourselves to others only brings distress and diverts us from our own spiritual journey. Stoicism, particularly through the teachings of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, emphasizes focusing only on what we can control. Comparison often revolves around external factors beyond our control: wealth, appearance, status. Epictetus stated, "If you want to be free, learn not to worry about things outside of your control." Instead of focusing on others, we should direct our energy towards self-improvement and becoming the best version of ourselves. One way to overcome the habit of comparison is to cultivate gratitude. Gratitude shifts our mindset from lack to abundance, from envy to appreciation. A mindfulness exercise to reduce comparison. Every morning, write down 3 things you are grateful for. When you start comparing yourself to others, pause and remind yourself of the good things you already have. Instead of resenting others' success, learn to congratulate them and use it as motivation for self-growth. By practicing gratitude, our minds become more peaceful and we free ourselves from the burden of unnecessary comparisons. Comparing yourself to others is a source of suffering and robs you of inner peace. Instead of looking outward, focus on yourself, practice gratitude, and work on self-improvement every day. This path leads to true freedom and happiness. Number 7, worrying about the past. We often carry memories from the past, mistakes, regrets, and things we wish we could change. But the past is like yesterday's newspaper. No matter how many times we read it, it remains the same. Meanwhile, the present is the only place where we can create something new. Buddhist philosophy emphasizes that worrying about the past only makes us prisoners of our own wandering thoughts. We cannot turn back time to fix mistakes, but we can change our perspective on the past to move forward with a more positive mindset. A young monk was walking along a rugged path when he tripped over a rock. He stood up, dusted off his robe, and immediately scolded himself. "Why was I so careless? I should have been more attentive." His frustration lingered for the rest of his journey. Seeing this, his teacher smiled and said, "Why did you stumble twice, once over the stone and once again in your mind?" At that moment, the young monk realized something profound. Falling is inevitable, but self-criticism is another kind of fall, one created by our own minds. If we can let go of self-blame, we can move forward with greater peace. Worrying about the past not only robs us of inner peace, but also negatively impacts our mental and physical well-being. Here are some consequences of dwelling on past mistakes. Stress and anxiety. Repeated negative thoughts create immense pressure, leading to mental exhaustion. Hindrance to personal growth. When we remain fixated on past errors, it becomes harder to progress in life. Strained relationships, regret and guilt can create emotional distance between us and others. Reduced quality of life. Being trapped in past regrets prevents us from fully experiencing the present. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means learning to accept the past without letting it control the present. Here are some practical ways to release the burden of the past. 1. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of focusing on the present moment rather than dwelling on the past or future. When you find yourself stuck in regret, pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that only the present matters. 2. Change your perspective on the past. View past mistakes as lessons rather than punishments. Every mistake carries a lesson. Instead of blaming yourself, ask, "What did I learn from this? How can I avoid repeating it?" Forgive yourself. Many people find it easier to forgive others than to forgive themselves. Remember, no one is perfect, and making mistakes does not define you. Self-forgiveness is essential for moving forward. 4. Write to release your emotions. If something from the past haunts you, try writing about it. Writing helps you see your thoughts more clearly, allowing you to process them rationally. 5. Take action. Instead of overthinking, if you can fix something from the past, take action. If not, accept it and focus on what you can do today to build a better future. The past is part of your life, but it is not everything. Learning to let go of yesterday's burdens allows you to live more fully in the present. Remember the Zen master's wisdom. Do not stumble twice, once on the path and once in your mind. Each new day is an opportunity to move forward with a lighter heart. Let the past be a lesson, not a burden. After all, the only moment you can truly live in is the present. Number 8, staying silent about your needs. In life, communication is the foundation of understanding, growth, and connection. Yet many of us struggle to voice our needs, often suppressing our desires out of fear, guilt, or a sense of duty to others. However, staying silent about our needs can lead to frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Buddhism emphasizes the importance of mindfulness in speech, which includes the ability to express our needs with kindness and sincerity. By practicing right speech, a key component of the Noble Eightfold Path, we can cultivate healthier relationships and a greater sense of inner peace. Many people believe that voicing their needs is selfish, but this could not be further from the truth. Just as we care for others, we must also care for ourselves. Suppressing our needs can lead to misunderstandings, emotional distress, and even physical health issues. When we fail to communicate what we require, whether it be emotional support, personal space, or professional recognition, we risk creating an environment where our well-being is neglected. Consider a scenario where an employee consistently works late hours without expressing concerns to their employer. Over time, they become exhausted, their performance declines, and they start to feel resentment toward their job. Had they spoken up earlier, a compromise could have been reached. This principle applies not only to work, but also to personal relationships, friendships, and even interactions with strangers. Buddhism teaches that speech should be truthful, kind, and beneficial. Right speech, one of the 8 principles of the Noble Eightfold Path, encourages mindful communication. This does not mean that we should speak thoughtlessly or impulsively, but rather that we should express ourselves with wisdom and compassion. Right speech involves speaking truthfully. Honesty is crucial in expressing our needs. We must acknowledge our desires and communicate them sincerely without deception. Speaking kindly, how we express our needs matters. Harsh or demanding words can create resistance, whereas gentle and respectful speech fosters understanding. Speaking at the right time. Choosing the appropriate moment to communicate ensures that our message is received positively. Speaking beneficially. Our words should contribute to the well-being of ourselves and others, rather than causing harm or division. By applying these principles, we can voice our needs in a way that strengthens relationships rather than causing tension. The consequences of staying silent: resentment and frustration. When we consistently suppress our needs, resentment can build over time. This can damage relationships, leading to passive-aggressive behavior or emotional distance. Emotional burnout. Constantly prioritizing others without acknowledging our own needs can lead to burnout. We may feel drained, unappreciated, and disconnected from ourselves. Miscommunication and assumptions. People are not mind readers. If we do not articulate our needs, others may assume we are content, leading to further disappointment and frustration. Low self-worth. Over time, neglecting our needs can make us feel undervalued, as if our desires are not important. This can impact our self-esteem and overall mental health. For many years, I believed that prioritizing others was a virtue. I rarely expressed my needs, fearing that I would come across as demanding or selfish. Whether it was agreeing to plans I didn't enjoy, taking on extra work despite feeling overwhelmed, or suppressing my emotions to avoid conflict, I remained silent. Over time, this silence took a toll. I felt unfulfilled in relationships, exhausted from overcommitment, and frustrated that others did not seem to recognize my struggles. I began to resent the very people I had been trying to accommodate. A turning point came when a close friend told me, "I had no idea you felt that way. If you had just told me, we could have found a solution together." That simple realization struck me deeply. My silence had not only hurt me, but had also deprived my loved ones of the chance to support me. I started small, expressing my preferences when making plans, setting boundaries at work, and being honest about my feelings. I noticed a shift. My relationships improved as my friends and family appreciated my honesty. My workplace became more manageable because I communicated my workload concerns. Most importantly, I felt a sense of relief and self-respect that I had never experienced before. How to begin expressing your needs. Self-reflection. Identify what you need. This could be emotional support, rest, clarity, or acknowledgement. Understanding your own needs is the first step to articulating them. Start small. Begin by expressing minor preferences in everyday situations, such as choosing a restaurant or declining an invitation. Use I statements. Instead of blaming or accusing, use statements like, I feel overwhelmed when I take on too much work, or I would appreciate more time to myself. Choose the right moment. Timing is crucial. Find a calm moment to express your needs rather than bringing them up in the heat of an argument. Practice compassionate communication. Speak with kindness and listen actively to the responses of others. A two-way conversation builds stronger relationships. Set boundaries. Healthy boundaries protect your well-being. Saying no when necessary is an act of self-care, not selfishness. Seek support if needed. If expressing your needs feels overwhelming, seek guidance from a mentor, therapist, or support group to build confidence. Expressing our needs does not mean we will always get what we want, but it ensures that we honor ourselves in the process. It fosters healthier relationships, prevents misunderstandings, and allows us to live with authenticity. When we communicate with mindfulness and compassion, we create an environment of mutual respect and understanding. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from attachment and unspoken desires. By learning to express ourselves openly and without fear, we release the burden of unspoken expectations. The path to inner peace is not through silence, but through honest and mindful expression. So let us take a step forward in speaking up for ourselves, not with anger, but with wisdom, not with demands, but with clarity, not with fear, but with confidence. In doing so, we create a world where both our voices and our hearts are heard. Number 9, trying to solve everyone's problems, a path to exhaustion. Trying to solve everyone's problems can be a sign of compassion and genuine concern. However, when we take on too much responsibility that is not ours, it not only harms our mental health, but can also hinder the development of those we are trying to help. Why do we want to help everyone? There are many reasons why people want to help others. Some are driven by natural compassion, wishing to alleviate others' suffering. Others feel a sense of duty or obligation, especially if they have been helped in the past. Additionally, sometimes helping others can provide a sense of value and purpose in one's own life. However, this motivation can become a burden when we fail to distinguish between supporting and taking full responsibility for someone else's problems. When we see helping as an inseparable part of our identity, we may get caught in a cycle of exhaustion and disappointment. Buddhism emphasizes compassion, but also reminds us not to be consumed by the suffering of others to the point that we forget ourselves. A monk once said, "If you see a person drowning, extend a hand to help them, but do not drown with them." This statement reminds us of the boundary between kindness and becoming entangled in others' problems. When helping, we need to remain clear-headed and not get too emotionally involved or take on too much responsibility. Consequences of trying to solve everyone's problems. Emotional and physical exhaustion. Constantly worrying about others' issues drains your energy and balance, leading to stress, anxiety, and even depression. Strained relationships. You may become the problem solver in the eyes of friends and family, making them dependent on you instead of learning to handle their challenges. This can create an imbalance in relationships, leading to feelings of being used or unappreciated. Hindering others' growth. If you always intervene in others' problems, they may never learn how to handle difficulties on their own. Facing challenges is a crucial part of personal growth and development. How to help without self-destruction? 1. Distinguish between helping and rescuing. There is an important difference between supporting someone and trying to save them. When you help, you provide tools, advice, or necessary support so they can resolve their problems themselves. But when you try to rescue, you may take on their responsibilities, which is unsustainable and not beneficial in the long run. 2. Set healthy boundaries. Learning to say no is an essential skill. You don't have to be present in every situation or solve every problem. Set clear boundaries to protect your mental and physical well being. 3. Let go of attachment to outcomes. In many cases, no matter how much effort you put in, results may not turn out as expected. This does not mean you have failed. Do your best within your means, but avoid being overly attached to the outcome. 4. Allow others to develop their independence. Sometimes the best way to help is to let others experience and learn from their mistakes. Don't rush to intervene every time they struggle. Instead, be there to support them when necessary. 5. Focus on helping effectively. Not every problem can or needs to be solved. Prioritize situations where you can genuinely make a difference without harming yourself. Compassion is a wonderful trait, but it must be balanced with wisdom to avoid becoming a burden. When you help someone, do so with mindfulness, not out of compulsion or excessive responsibility. Remember that you cannot solve everyone's problems, and that's perfectly okay. Live with kindness, but also know when to step back to protect yourself. Sometimes the best way to help is to let others learn how to stand on their own feet. Number 10, neglecting your own happiness. True happiness lies within each person. The Dalai Lama once said, "Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions." However, many of us forget our own happiness while chasing external things, trying to please others, or prioritizing duties and responsibilities. When you neglect your happiness, you not only lose the joy of living, but also risk falling into stress, exhaustion, and dissatisfaction. Reasons we neglect our own happiness. 1. Social pressure and expectations from others. We grow up in a society with numerous rules, pressures, and expectations. Family, friends, colleagues, and even social media set standards for success, career, and happiness that we feel compelled to follow. But if these goals do not truly reflect our desires, we will gradually lose joy. 2. Putting others' needs above our own. Many people spend most of their lives taking care of others, from family and friends to colleagues. While selflessness is a virtue, if we constantly put others first and forget our needs, we will soon feel drained and empty. 3. Getting caught up in work and responsibilities. Work, obligations, and responsibilities are essential parts of life, but if we let them consume all our time and energy, there will be no space left for what truly brings us joy. A life filled only with work, without moments of enjoyment, quickly becomes meaningless. 4. Comparing ourselves to others. We often look at others' lives and feel inferior or inadequate. This is especially common in the age of social media, where people only share their best moments. Constantly comparing ourselves to others makes us forget the good things we already have. 5. Losing connection with ourselves. When life gets busy, we easily lose touch with ourselves. We no longer take time to listen to our inner selves, to understand what we truly want, like, and what makes us happy. This leads to living on autopilot, lacking joy or fulfillment. Consequences of neglecting personal happiness. Stress and burnout. When you do not take time to care for yourself, you are more likely to experience prolonged stress, which can lead to physical and mental exhaustion. Loss of life's joy. Life becomes monotonous, dull, and lacks excitement. Negative impact on relationships. When you are unhappy, it affects how you interact with others, potentially causing unnecessary conflicts. Health deterioration. Neglecting happiness can lead to health issues such as insomnia, anxiety, depression, and weakened immunity. How to cultivate happiness from within. 1. Practice gratitude. Take a few minutes each day to reflect on the good things in your life. Keeping a gratitude journal helps you realize that happiness is not a distant goal but can be found in everyday moments. 2. Make time for what you love. Rediscover your passions and hobbies. Whether it's painting, cooking, reading, or traveling, take time to enjoy these activities without guilt. 3. Learn to say no. You do not always have to please everyone. Learning to say no to things that do not align with you will give you more time and energy for yourself. 4. Connect with nature. Spending time in nature, walking in the park, hiking, or simply watching the sunset can bring a sense of peace and help you reconnect with yourself. 5. Practice meditation and mindfulness. Meditation not only reduces stress, but also helps you focus on the present moment, enjoying life instead of worrying about the future or regretting the past. 6. Set personal goals. Instead of chasing societal standards, set goals that truly resonate with you. This will give your life more direction and meaning. 7. Surround yourself with inspiring people. Spend time with people who bring positivity and motivation rather than those who only add stress and negativity. 8. Take care of your mental and physical health. A healthy lifestyle, including a balanced diet, regular exercise, and sufficient sleep, will make you feel better both physically and mentally. Daily exercises to reconnect with happiness. Morning. Spend 5 minutes writing down 3 things you are grateful for and set a small goal for the day. Midday. Take at least 15 minutes to do something you enjoy, whether it's listening to your favorite song or taking a relaxing walk. Evening. Before bed, write down one moment that made you smile that day. Happiness is not a distant concept or something that only comes when you achieve something grand. It exists in the small moments of life, in how you care for yourself and enjoy each day. Do not let pressures, responsibilities, or external expectations make you forget your own happiness. Start today by prioritizing self-care, doing what you love, and finding joy in everyday life. Number 11. Fear of aging. Aging is inevitable, but suffering is optional. This truth is particularly emphasized in Buddhist philosophy, where aging is seen not as a curse, but as a natural phase of life, a transition that brings wisdom, perspective, and the opportunity for spiritual growth. However, in modern society, the fear of aging is deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness. Many people dread the signs of aging, from physical changes to the inevitable approach of death. This fear is fueled by societal expectations, media portrayals of youth as the ideal, and personal anxieties about health, independence, and relevance. In many cultures, particularly in the West, youth is idolized. Advertisements promote anti-aging products, cosmetic procedures promise to erase wrinkles, and social media often showcases an unrealistic standard of beauty that prioritizes youthfulness over the natural aging process. Aging is sometimes portrayed as a decline, a loss of value, rather than a progression toward greater wisdom and deeper self-understanding. This cultural bias against aging contributes to widespread anxiety. People fear losing their physical attractiveness, their cognitive abilities, or their independence. They worry about becoming a burden to their families or being forgotten by society. This fear can be so intense that it leads to extreme measures, such as excessive plastic surgery, an obsession with youth-preserving treatments, or even a refusal to acknowledge aging altogether. Buddhism offers a refreshing and liberating perspective on aging. Rather than viewing it as something to be resisted, it is seen as an integral part of existence. The Buddhist teachings emphasize impermanence, anicca, the idea that everything in life is in constant flux. Youth fades, bodies change, and eventually life comes to an end. Recognizing this truth helps cultivate acceptance rather than resistance. Buddhism also teaches detachment from the ego, which is often at the root of the fear of aging. When people identify too strongly with their physical bodies, their appearance, or their achievements, they suffer when these things begin to change. By embracing impermanence and letting go of attachment to youth, one can find peace and contentment in every stage of life. Imagine life as a candle. Instead of fearing the moment it extinguishes, cherish the warmth and light it provides while it burns. This simple but profound metaphor captures the essence of a mindful approach to aging. The candle does not mourn its eventual end. It simply shines as long as it can, providing light and warmth to those around it. Similarly, a life well lived is not measured by its length, but by the quality of the moments within it. By shifting our focus from the fear of the end to the beauty of the present, we can transform our relationship with aging. Instead of dreading wrinkles, we can see them as evidence of a life filled with laughter, love, and experience. Instead of fearing physical decline, we can embrace the opportunity to slow down, reflect, and cultivate inner peace. One of the greatest gifts of aging is wisdom. With time comes experience, and with experience comes understanding. Many of the worries and anxieties that once consumed us in youth begin to lose their grip as we gain perspective. We learn what truly matters and let go of trivial concerns. We develop patience, resilience, and a deeper appreciation for the present moment. In many traditional cultures, elders are revered for their wisdom. They serve as guides, mentors, and storytellers, passing down valuable lessons to younger generations. However, in modern societies where speed and innovation are prioritized, the voices of older individuals are sometimes overlooked. By shifting our mindset to value the wisdom that comes with age, we can not only alleviate our own fears, but also change the way society treats aging as a whole. While philosophical perspectives can be helpful, practical approaches are also essential for addressing the fear of aging. Here are a few ways to cultivate a healthier relationship with the aging process. Practice mindfulness and gratitude. Instead of worrying about the future, focus on the present. Appreciate what your body and mind can do today. Keep a gratitude journal to remind yourself of the beauty and blessings in every stage of life. Redefine beauty and strength. Challenge societal norms that equate beauty with youth. Beauty can be found in wisdom, confidence, and kindness. Strength is not just about physical ability, but also about resilience, emotional intelligence, and inner peace. Stay engaged and curious. Lifelong learning keeps the mind sharp and engaged. Explore new hobbies, learn new skills, or read widely. Engage in activities that bring joy and fulfillment rather than focusing on age-related limitations. Cultivate meaningful relationships. Surround yourself with supportive and uplifting people. Strong social connections contribute to overall well-being. Share your experiences with younger generations. Your wisdom and stories are valuable. Take care of your health. While aging is natural, maintaining a healthy lifestyle can enhance the quality of life. Regular exercise, a balanced diet, and proper rest contribute to overall well-being. Prioritize mental health by practicing self-care, meditation, or seeking support when needed. Shift your perspective on death. Many fears about aging are ultimately tied to the fear of death. Exploring philosophies or spiritual traditions that address this fear can be liberating. Understand that life's impermanence makes each moment more precious. Instead of fearing the end, celebrate the present. Aging is not a curse, it is a gift. It is a testament to survival, resilience, and the richness of experience. Every wrinkle tells a story, every gray hair marks a lesson learned, and every year lived is an achievement in itself. Rather than fearing the inevitable, we can choose to embrace the journey with grace and gratitude. By shifting our mindset, cultivating acceptance, and focusing on the beauty of the present, we can transform aging from something to be feared into something to be celebrated. Just like the candle that burns brightly until the very end, we can live each moment fully, shining our light without fear. Ultimately, the fear of aging is a product of resistance to change. But when we learn to flow with the natural rhythm of life, we discover that every stage has its own beauty, its own lessons, and its own unique opportunities for growth. Number 12, worrying about death. Death is not the end, but a transformation. In Buddhism, death is seen as a transition, not a finality. The idea of impermanence, anicca, is a fundamental teaching that helps us understand that everything in life is temporary, including our physical existence. By embracing this truth, we free ourselves from the grip of fear and instead learn to appreciate the beauty of each moment we are given. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is that everything in the universe is subject to change. Our bodies, our thoughts, and even our emotions are in a constant state of flux. The law of impermanence reminds us that nothing remains the same forever. While this might seem unsettling at first, it also offers great freedom. Understanding that death is merely another phase in the cycle of existence allows us to live without the constant anxiety of our eventual passing. Many people worry about death because they view it as an end, an absolute cessation of being. However, Buddhist philosophy teaches that death is not an annihilation, but a transition. It is like a river flowing into the ocean. The water does not disappear, but rather merges with something greater. Similarly, death is a continuation of existence in another form, whether in the cycle of rebirth, samsara, or in a spiritual transformation beyond human understanding. Fear of death often arises from our attachment to the self. We tend to identify strongly with our bodies, our identities, and our experiences, making it difficult to accept the idea of leaving them behind. However, Buddhist teachings encourage us to detach from these temporary aspects of existence and recognize that the self is an illusion. What we perceive as I is actually a collection of ever-changing elements, our body, thoughts, and emotions, all of which dissolve and reform in new ways. The fear of the unknown is also rooted in our inability to see beyond the present state of consciousness. Many religious and philosophical traditions have attempted to describe what happens after death, but the truth remains a mystery. Buddhism suggests that rather than fearing this mystery, we should embrace it with openness and curiosity. The practice of mindfulness and meditation allows us to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them, helping us develop a sense of peace even in the face of uncertainty. Another reason we worry about death is our deep-seated desire for control. We like to believe that we can shape our destinies, make plans for the future, and secure our lives against the inevitable. However, death is one of the few things that remains beyond our control. No matter how much we try to avoid or delay it, it will come for each of us in its own time. Rather than resisting this reality, Buddhism teaches us to surrender to it. This does not mean giving up on life or neglecting our responsibilities, but rather accepting that uncertainty is part of existence. When we let go of our need to control every aspect of our lives, we find a deeper sense of peace and contentment. One of the most powerful ways to overcome the fear of death is to fully embrace life as it is happening. When we dwell on the past or worry about the future, we miss the richness of the present moment. The Buddha's words remind us, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment." By practicing mindfulness, we cultivate a sense of awareness that allows us to experience life more deeply. We begin to see the beauty in small things, the warmth of the sun, the sound of laughter, the kindness of a stranger. Each moment becomes precious, not because it will last forever, but precisely because it will not. Knowing that life is fleeting encourages us to live with greater appreciation and love. Another way to ease the fear of death is by letting go of attachments. We often fear losing loved ones, material possessions, or achievements that define our sense of self. However, Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering. The more we cling to things, the more we suffer when they inevitably change or disappear. By practicing non-attachment, we cultivate a mindset that allows us to experience joy without clinging to it and to face loss without despair. This does not mean we should not love or cherish the people and things in our lives, but rather that we should appreciate them without becoming dependent on their permanence. Many Buddhist traditions emphasize the importance of preparing for death while we are still alive. This is not meant to be a morbid exercise, but rather a way to cultivate wisdom and peace. Some practices that help with this include meditation on impermanence. Reflecting on the temporary nature of all things helps reduce attachment and fear. Loving kindness meditation, metta. Cultivating compassion for oneself and others fosters a sense of connection that transcends physical existence. Practicing generosity. Giving to others and living selflessly allows us to develop a sense of fulfillment that does not depend on material possessions or status. Mindful living, living each day with awareness and gratitude, makes us more prepared to face death with peace and acceptance. Instead of fearing death, we can see it as one of our greatest teachers. It reminds us of what truly matters and encourages us to live in alignment with our deepest values. When we acknowledge the reality of death, we prioritize relationships, experiences, and personal growth over superficial concerns. Many who have had near-death experiences report a shift in perspective. They often emerge with a greater appreciation for life and a reduced fear of death. This suggests that confronting mortality can actually enrich our existence rather than diminish it. Ultimately, worrying about death is natural, but it is not necessary. By understanding the impermanent nature of existence, releasing our attachments, and fully embracing the present moment, we can transform fear into peace. Death is not an end, it is simply a transition, a change in form, a continuation of the cycle of existence. When we stop fearing death, we begin to live more fully. We love more deeply, appreciate more sincerely, and approach each day with gratitude. Instead of seeing death as something to dread, we can view it as a gentle reminder to make the most of the time we have. The Buddha's wisdom guides us. Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. By following this teaching, we find freedom, not only from the fear of death, but also from the limitations that prevent us from truly living. In learning to let go, we do not lose. Instead, we gain clarity, freedom, and an appreciation for what truly matters. Holding on to past regrets, grudges, or even material possessions weighs down the soul like a heavy stone. Life, especially after 70, should not be about accumulating burdens, but about releasing them, making room for serenity and deeper understanding. When we detach from the unnecessary, we allow space for joy, wisdom, and the natural flow of life. The art of letting go is not about abandonment, but about trust. Trust in the unfolding of life, trust in the wisdom of impermanence, and trust in the peace that comes with surrender. Too often we cling to things, be it pride, past mistakes, or even worries about the future, forgetting that life is transient. Instead of resisting change, we can learn to flow with it, just as rivers carve their path effortlessly through the landscape. Live simply, love deeply, and walk the path of Dharma with grace, knowing that true wealth lies not in possession, but in presence. If today were your last, would you spend it worrying over small matters? Or would you bask in the warmth of the sun, take a deep breath, and marvel at the fleeting, precious beauty of life?